Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, so if you're just joining us, go ahead and just get yourselves connected. We'll start momentarily. Thank you for joining us for the Grandes Pagos webinar today. All right. Natasha, we can go ahead and just maybe start sharing screens if that's
Sure.
Quick hello. So thank you so much for joining us. We know that we're going to go ahead and get started on time, let other people join in subsequent course. So I'm Helen Gregory, the founder, president of Gregory and Vine, and it is such a pleasure to have you join us for what has been almost a decade of work and thousands of hours invested in developing educational and workshop content for Grandes Pagos de España. We're going to go ahead and share screens and then introduce you to our speakers today and talk to you about the organization. So Natasha, I'll let you kind of get that up and running before we get started here. Okay, wonderful. So and we can go ahead and just advance to the host and speakers slide. A couple of small just housekeeping notes before we get started. There is a portion of today's webinar that where you can elect just taste wines or just hear about wines. If you could put yourselves on mute and make sure to share your Q&A, your questions in the chat. We will periodically go to the chat and make sure that your questions are answered. And we also reserve time at the end to address Q&A. And we do hope that you have many, many questions because our speakers today are wonderfully equipped to answer them. So Natasha Mallory is our director, one of the directors and global brand ambassadors for Grandes Pagos de España for the Terroir workshops, which is our new education platform on a global basis. María del Yerro is the co-founder of Viñedos Alonso del Yerro in Ribera del Duero and also the president of Grandes Pagos de España. And Alvaro Perez is the director of the Terroir Academy at Abadía Retuerta, DOP Abadía Retuerta. So before we get started, we wanted to make sure to tell you a little bit more about what Grandes Pagos de España is. So here you have 35 logos for wineries, many of which I think you probably have seen or heard of before. Some may be less familiar than others. So the organizing principle for Grandes Pagos de España, Tasha, if you just want to keep going. What do all of these wineries share and ultimately it's a commitment to terroir winemaking, and not just terroir winemaking, but to the culture of terroir in Spain. So quality is what every one of these regions, every one of these wineries shares. So Grandes Pagos de España is a single vineyard organization. So strict membership criteria based on exceptional estate and single vineyard first, a track record of industry recognition for more than 5 years, rigorous inspection and quality testing, annual blind tasting, which means that this is not a tenured organization. Once you join or become a member of Grandes Pagos and are accepted into the organization, you have to maintain those quality standards based on blind tasting evaluations by an independent tasting committee each year. Membership in the organization is becoming increasingly more and more difficult because it does require unanimous vote by all existing members to pass that final round. And membership will be revoked if a winery fails to meet the quality criteria and the standards of the organization. So that's a little bit about Grandes Pagos. Historically, the organization Grandes Pagos de Castilla was at the foundation of what is today called Grandes Pagos de España. Grandes Pagos de Castilla in the Meseta North came together in 2000, founded by 5 estates, to essentially recognize the emerging importance of single vineyard and pago winemaking in Spain. In 2003, this preceded the actual formal designation in Spanish wine law of vino de pago. And there was a lot of collaboration between the original founders of Grandes Pagos de Castilla and the Spanish government to add single estate wines to national wine law. By 2004, Grandes Pagos de España had been renamed and expanded beyond Castilla with 12 member estates, and today there are 35 wineries that are members of the organization. So What does that translate to in terms of production? It's still fairly small production when you think of the vast expanse of Spain and where all of the wineries are based, which is in 8 distinct regions of Spain. And when we say regions of Spain, we're not talking about what we learned, the DO principle or model exclusively. We're talking about Green Spain, Meseta North, Ebro River Valley, Meseta Central, Catalonia, Mediterranean, the South, and the islands. So Grandes Pagos de España aspires to present winemaking from a cultural and geographic perspective that is the way that the Spanish people think of their own cultural, geographic, and shared ties. It is 100% single estate small production, which means that it's not the winery that is a member, it is the Pago that is recognized as a member of the organization. Collectively, the acreage is not that big. But what is super exciting, and this is just a small glimpse, is the number of grape varieties, among other areas of distinction, that the wineries are working with today. There are 28 red and 32 white, which I'm sure is a much far bigger lexicon of grape varieties than what we are accustomed to seeing in the textbooks about Spain, which might be 10 or 12. But there's a lot of work to also preserve and identify heirloom varieties in addition to some of the very classic expressions of Spanish terroir. The wineries range in size. There are 3 that are less than 3,500 cases. You have a medium of about 17 that are around less than 16,000 cases and 15 that are more than 16,500. The criteria is not based on having just a small boutique production. You have some that are bigger production. Again, it's just based on the character and nature of terroir. So let's move forward a little bit. We often get the question, what is the difference between Vino de Pago and Grandes Pagos de España? The Vino de Pago is the classification established in 2003 by the Spanish government. The legal requirements for Vino de Pago are primarily based on soil composition. GPE membership requires much more. It is a track record of quality that is defined by benchmarks, yes, that include style, balance, terroir, and legacy, but often also adhere to sustainability, stewardship of environment, and cultural legacies, the people behind the wines. Not all Vino de Pago wineries are GPE members and vice versa. So they are different designations, but they are closely related, and there's been a long integrated relationship between the recognition of Pago by the Spanish government and the member wineries of GPE. Also important to note, and Natasja will touch upon this later as well, that many of the wineries are not just a Pago winery. Of course, they're also DO wineries. They might be making a Vino de la Tierra. So wineries can hold multiple designations. The Grandes Pagos de España designation is the one that recognizes single vineyard classification above all. So what are the objectives? The reason we wanted to come together today is that this has been one of the most exciting and busiest years of growth on a global scale for Grandes Pagos de España, and the primary driver of that has been education. This year in March, we announced the launch of the Spanish Terroir Workshop. The Spanish Terroir Workshop aims to essentially be an advocate for single vineyard winemaking from Spain around the world, and we are now launching all of our workshops in the United States. It is about an exchange of knowledge, not just with professionals, but also professionals in media, but also with consumers. Terroir workshops launching soon have already happened in LA, Miami, now in the Midwest, and in other parts of the country, invite consumers into the experience and journey that Spanish wine is for many, to impart information that maybe isn't classically being shared. For example, it's not just about the geography, which of course is so important to understand wine, but also the culture that is a driving force behind so many of the wineries. The wineries are committed to sustainability on many different levels. We all know sustainability is a big tent. Some of the wineries are biodynamic, some are organic, all have sustainability initiatives. At the conference we attended that included in this spring, that included the wine growers and viticultural teams, as well as the export directors and managers of the wineries. A huge touch point for all was climate change and responsiveness to climate change, the challenge that represents in Spain, of course, as it does around the world. And last but not least, it's about destination, tourism, and discovery. Not only are many of these wineries based in some of the most beautiful spots in Spain, but many also offer opportunities for wine lovers to discover Spanish wine at the source. So the first announcement we made this year was the Spanish Terroir Workshop. The second announcement we made this year was the nomination of María del Yerro as the new president of Pagos de España. So Maria, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Maria is the first woman to lead the organization since its history and inception, so which is exciting. And Tony Sarrion, who is the former president, the president emeritus, in his words, he's the founder of Bodega Musteguillo, really encapsulated what the definition, what's beyond that definition, textbook definition of Pago, and why the Terroir Workshop is important to the wineries. It's about identity. And every winery, that all the 35 wineries that are members of GPE have a unique identity that's based on geography, culture, and history. But ultimately, it's about the people behind the wines. And we're going to hear from some of those people right now. But we also want to reinforce now and at the end of this that we want to be a resource to connect all of you with the people behind these wines, the real challenges, the true stories that are defining and shaping Spanish wines today, whether that's in the cultural sphere, destination and travel, and most importantly, in the geography, the climate, and some of the challenges that wineries are confronting, and the ability that they have uniquely, perhaps more than any other organization of Spanish wineries in Spain, to connect with pretty much every touch point in Spain, so that a winery in Mallorca can talk to somebody in Meseta North or somebody from, in Galicia, and discuss strategies collectively to overcome everything from viticulture to success stories and best practices that can be shared to, bringing in visitors and even bringing wine commercially into new markets. So we'll be sharing this presentation with you. And certainly, I think now we want to hear from the wineries. So Tasha, let's advance. And I want to hand it over to Natasha to talk about the Terroir Workshop, but maybe just one slide just to show you what the Terroir Workshop is.
It's coming.
Thank you.
Well, there we go.
Okay. So the Terroir Workshop is a collective, talk about human achievement, 35 wineries all through Spain came together to define a new organizing principle and paradigm for thinking about the terroir of Spain, the regions climatically, geographically, but also culturally that shape the true dialogue about Spanish wines today. These are 4 of our ambassadors, including Natasha, who have started to present the Terroir Workshop to consumers and to trade. What does it include? When you sign up for a Terroir Workshop, you get an extensive self-study guide, the pre-read, the digital textbook that talks about the politics, the culture, the landscape, the climate, but then guided classroom study and tasting. And then every single one of our wineries also has an 8-page guide to discovering their terroir and what that identity is of terroir culture. So I'm going to hand it over to Natasha to lead the Q&A and the discussion with Maria, with Alvaro, and also please remember to put questions in the chat. We'll get to all of them. And Natasha.
Well, hello. Thank you so much, Maria and Alvaro, for being with us today. It's nice when we can find a time in the day where both Spanish time and US time coincides. We can have you all live, and that's the beauty of these webinars too. Maria, I'd like to start with you. You are a newly elected president for Grandes Pagos. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is about just over a 20-year-old organization, and there's been a great evolution, I think, from its beginnings to where we are now. But can you tell us a little bit about what your vision is for the organization and a little bit what your objectives are?
Well, I'm glad to be here with all of you, and thank you, Helen, for this explanation about Grandes Pagos de España, because it was really exactly what we wanted to promote and to explain to everybody. Grandes Pagos de España, as you explained very well, it has been growing during the years and in importance and in really in people and in wineries. And I think that my mission as a president is really to consolidate these this association that has been really having a lot of importance in the last years. And then I would like to really continue to grow in importance, insisting on the single state wines and to attract to other wineries that are in Spain and that could be inside the association. And I'm sure that they will love to be with us, because they could benefit of all the exchange of knowledge that we can offer for enologists, for marketing, for the brand, for everything. And that's what I'm going to try to explain to everybody.
So how big do you think Grandes Pagos could grow to be? I mean, there are still, I think, a few areas of Spain that don't necessarily have members. What do you envision for that?
Well, I think that Spain is a very rich in wine states and in vineyards, and there are a lot of states that share our philosophy of high quality wines from our own grapes and from our states. And then I would like to have all of them with us because I think union really is a strength. At the end, it's easier to go to the US and to make a show of all the wines. If we are 35, we are enough wineries to have attention. But if we will be 50, it would be better. But all of them have to share our philosophy. That's really important.
So can you tell us, we talked about a few of the entrance criteria for Grandes Pagos, but one thing we didn't necessarily mention is that there's quite an exhaustive study that has to be presented to join. And what criteria are you looking for there?
Well, they have to be really consolidated wineries. They have to have been in the market during at least 5 years with really high scores from critics and national and international, and they have to work the vines we ask for other wineries, and they have to use their own grapes, and that's they have to.
And I think I understand too that they have to present very detailed soil studies, climate studies. And then there's actually a committee of Grandes Pagos, which is comprised of both managers and technical people that go and do inspections, correct?
Yeah, and at the end, we have a committee of expert tasting that they taste the wines and they say if the wines are good enough for being part of the association. And that's the final way to go. And then after, if they have good scores from these tasters, then we present the winery to all the members of the association at the General Assembly, and they have to vote if they accept to be part of the association or not.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about Viñedos Alonso del Yerro. Tell us, when did your winery first become part of Grandes Pagos?
Well, we created the Vineyards Alonso del Yerro. It was really my husband's dream. He wanted to create something by his own related to the wine, because we were really passionate by this world of wine, but we are not winemakers, or we weren't winemakers or agronomists, but it was our hobby. And then in 2002, we bought 26 hectares of vineyards, Tempranillo vines in Ribera del Duero, and we started to make wines. But we looked for the best professionals for making the wines. Stéphane de Renoncourt in Bordeaux, he was our consultant for the vineyards and the wines. And Claude Bourguignon, he analyzed all the soils that we had. And then when you are working with these professionals, you become immediately ecological, organical, and biodynamic, because you understand perfectly well that the wine is made in the vineyards, in the vines. And then when we launched the wines into the market in 2005, and after 5 years with good scores from Parker and Tim Atkin and other professionals, then we applied to be part of Grandes Pagos de España, because we share their philosophy at 100%. Right. So we entered in 2010.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the wine itself? Some people have received the Alonso del Yerro 2017 wines. And tell us a little bit about, we know that you have worked with Claude Bourguignon and identified all the different types of terrains that you have. And actually, I think I'll share screens again, because we do have a few slides actually from our presentation. Let's see here, I just need to get the right one up. But we have a few slides from our pardon me one second, from our terroir workshop that I wanted to share with you all. But in the meantime, can you, Maria, I know that you all have identified certain pagos, certain crews within your own vineyard.
Yeah, we have the 26 hectares are divided in 4 big plots. All of them, the names are after our children, because everything at the winery is related to the family. And then when we made the study from Claude Bourguignon, we subdivided the 4 big plots in 32 small plots. And all of them are worked, well, depending on the soils, differently. And then we selected 2 of these small plots that they are small pagos, 2 of them for making the selection, the top wine that it's called, that is Maria, my first name, and with the rest of the small plots we make Alonso del Yerro, but we vinify separately by this type of soil. We make the final blend just when all the different plots have been aging in the barrels enough time. It's a bit like in Burgundy, and then at the end of all the different soils, the sandy soils, clay soils, limestone, when all of them have been enough time in the barrels, not the same time, then we blend and we make the Alonso del Yerro, the wine that you are going to taste today.
So, so this is a reflection of really your entire vineyard, and you blend kind of the best parts of your entire vineyard. I did throw a few shots up there, and I would say that you know, this winery is located in Roa Ribera del Duero, so further east in the Ribera del Duero region, and it's a chateau style winery. Your vineyards surround the winery, which makes things a lot easier. And there's a lot of wineries, very good wineries in Ribera del Duero that source from various municipalities, but you obviously work with your vineyards that are right there at you know, around the winery. And, you know, I think a question a lot of people ask, you know, you belong to the DO Ribera del Duero, and you're very happily participate in the DO Ribera del Duero. So why do Grandes Pagos too?
Well, I think it's independent one of the other. Ribera del Duero, it's a region, and I'm proud to be a part of Ribera del Duero wines. And but Grandes Pagos de España, it's far away. That is, it's more, it's a sign of quality. And Ribera del Duero, I think it reflects not the quality but the region. There are good, better. There are other wineries that have nothing in common with me, but in Grandes Pagos de España, we are a big family, and all of us, we share same philosophy, and that's very, very comfortable.
That's terrific. I think I'll jump in and introduce Álvaro Pérez from Abadía Retuerta. And we can, I can find the slides here for Abadía, and we can take a look real quick about at those slides. But Álvaro, can you tell us first a little bit about Abadía Retuerta? It's a very, very old property that has been brought back to life.
Yeah, is as old as from the 12th century. It was in 1146 when some monks decided to build a monastery right upon the reconquer of the land that the Spaniards did to the Moors who invaded us, and they settled up several monasteries around Castile, and this is one of it. Obviously, the site, the enclave, is quite interesting. Is around the Duero River. We are located in the heart of the Duero Valley. The Duero River is the same river that flows to Porto, Portugal, but we are way upstream. That means that we are obviously high in altitude. And I sometimes say that we are one of the oldest wineries in Europe, because there were wine and vines since the 12th century, because these monks were coming from France and brought their stocks with them and their vines. And what we are just trying to do right now over these past years is trying to recuperate this tradition and this legacy to the property. And I believe we are, without sounding pretentious, we're doing a good job. And there's the monastery has been converted into a 12th century, into a 5-star hotel. And there's a 1-star Michelin restaurant also. So wine tourism is a key asset for our property. And sometimes I say that this is the most splendorous times for Abadía Retuerta, but we still even have room to improve this now. So basically, we brought back basically into the landscape the pine trees, the vineyards, and the historical building, and that's around our 700-hectare property, which I always define as a forest with some vineyards.
So you are within the Duero Valley.
Mhm.
You are west of Maria, following the Duero River. But yet, Abadía Retuerta was outside of Dio Ribera del Duero for many years. And but now is you have recently, within the last year, I believe it is, been awarded Vino de Pago status, and you are now DOP Abadía Retuerta.
That's right. Yes, we have our own DO right now. We were granted last year. We've been working on that for many years, but yeah, we basically wanted to stand out the way we were working in Abadía Retuerta for many years. It is true that we tried to join Ribera del Duero at the beginning, but we were told gently that this could not be possible because they couldn't open the doors to everyone on all frontiers, because we were right at the edge, at the borderline of the Ribera del Duero. And now we continue to do the things as we think we should do, with basically maintaining the style of our wines, so that the wines or the label, the one which is behind the label, can tell vintage after vintage that it's coming from this place, the essence of the place. Yes.
So Pago Negralada, we've actually got the word Pago there in the name of the wine. And I'm going to clarify one quick thing that's also a question we get quite a bit. So Pago in Spanish more or less means cru, like in French. There are many wines that use Pago in their name, and if they were using Pago in their name prior to 2003, they are grandfathered and allowed to continue to use the word Pago in the name of their wine. Anything past 2003 now, unless you are a Vino de Pago, you cannot use that word in the name of your wine. Pago Negralada, you have several Pago wines. As a matter of fact, single vineyard wines that are monovarietals. And this is a monovarietal Tempranillo. Can you tell us a little bit about how your terroir is reflected in this wine?
Well, we do a lot of research in terms of viticulture and winemaking over the years. We've learned a lot. We got much more experienced, and vines are getting more and more adapted to the place. And what we have learned is that now with the climate change, there's several pagos or plots that are better suited to certain varietals. And in this case, Pago Negralada is definitely where we get the best expression of our Tempranillo. It is where the purity of Tempranillo comes from. It is very close to the Duero River. It is in the lower part of the valley, which paradoxically, it is the coldest part of the property. Is 2 degrees Celsius less than up in the slope, because heavy. Colder air is heavier and sort of settles down in the lower parts of the valley. Adding to this, the phreatic level of the water tables are sort of close to the surface, only 3.5 meters. That means the roots are already there, because these vines are 30 years old. So this, in a way, they can manage very well themselves in terms of water disposal. And adding to that, also late in the growing cycle, when the nights are getting sort of longer and longer, late August, beginning of September, we started to get some morning dew very close to the river, which helps a lot when the vines are a little bit tired from the hot summer, to really finish up maturation very nicely. So basically, we get our grapes from Pago Negralada. It is 16-hectare plot divided into 4, and we do individual winemaking of all those 4 subplots, and we decide which is the one that really better reflects the style of the wine, and also the touch of the vintage as well, because we are, I wouldn't say obsessed, but we care a lot about maintaining the style of the wines, of each wine, but also obviously if you're making terroir-based wines, the climate should be reflected, the vintage should be reflected as well on the wine.
Right. Well, it's all these little details that count, obviously, in making these kind of wines. I'm going to now, I like reverse ordering the tastings and starting with reds and then going to whites, because it really shows you the quality of a white if it stands up after reds. So we're going to go backwards here a little bit, because I know some people received a wonderful wine from Ria Spicious from the winery Fia-Boa. So we're going to, I was going to back up here and talk about that property. It is right on the Rio Minho there, right on the border of Portugal in Ria Spicious. And I think many people probably understand that in general, Ria Spicious is a lot of very small plots, what they call minifundio. So it's a lot of, in fact, the average plot size is less than 1 hectare, and it's a lot of families farming. So a lot of wines coming from Ria Spicious wind up being from many different parcels spread out among maybe one subregion like Val do São Lés, or across even the subregions, and it can come from other areas. Fia-Boa actually has one of the largest extensions of vineyard in all of the denomination of origin Ria Spicious. They are located in Condado do Teia, and I think that makes makes these wines very special. So yes, they have identified many different plots within their vineyard extension, and in fact, they do have a single vineyard wine, or a single plot wine, that's called Selección Finca Monte Alto. But the rest of Fia-Boa, the Fia-Boa Cuvée, the normal one, is obviously made from several of these different plots, but within a single vineyard, and that's just very, very unusual in Ria Spicious. I'd also point out that they're based in Condado de Teia, and for me, this is such a reflection of their position there, a little bit further away from the Atlantic, very close to the Minho River, as you can see in this photo. And it just winds up having this balance that so many wines in the Condado area have. So they have the wonderful acidic soils that help give Albarino, which is already has a certain acidity to it. It just kind of reinforces that lovely acidity. But since we're in a little bit a warmer area of Ria Spicious, it really gets the ripeness that helps balance out a lot of that acidity. And it just makes these wines have so much fruit weight and so much material that it really makes it these wonderful aging wines. And that's one of Fia-Boa's innovations, is to make Albarino wines that withstand the test of time. This one, as you can see, is rested on the lees for 6 months. And they see a positive evolution in the bottle for up to 3 years with this wine. Their Selección Finca Monte Alto, the recent vintage of that had 24 months on the lees. and it doesn't see any oak. And that wine is able to age much beyond even that. And I think that's one of their great objectives, is to make these wines that will evolve over quite a long period of time. And that's just, they're one of the first wineries in Rías Baixas to have started experimenting with this. Isabel Salgado, the winemaker, is really skilled with using the lees to get these results, to get the complexity in the wine. And obviously the lees also give the wine a stability that allows it to age. You can see also, obviously, Rías Baixas known for their extremely wet and rainy weather. They have the granite, sandy textured granite soils that allow for the drainage that's necessary. And they also cultivate a good part of their vineyard with the para, the pergolas that hold the vines 2 meters up off the soil to allow good wind circulation, keep the vine health, and of course to expose the grapes horizontally to the sun. So I hope everybody will get a chance to try Fioboa, an absolutely splendid, very, very varietal Albarino. And then we can talk about Valdespino, and we'll take a trip down to Jerez. You can see this big white patch on the map there. The Albariza soils in concrete. Here we go. This is actually a photo of Marcharnudo Alto, the higher part of the Marcharnudo vineyard. This is one of the most famous vineyards in Jerez. It's been identified as a very special vineyard for centuries. And Valdespino is one of the very few wineries that have vineyards within Marcharnudo. So this vineyard is very much like in Bordeaux. There are multiple owners and cultivators within the Marcharnudo vineyard. And Valdespino is one of the last or only wineries in Jerez making a single vineyard fino and amontillado. And they are the only ones that are barrel fermenting their wines. So this fino is barrel fermented, obviously comes from this single Marcharnudo plot, this absolutely beautiful Albariza soil. And what's so special about Marcharnudo Alto is also its orientation. So it is facing south and west. So it's more orientated towards the Atlantic part of southern Spain rather than the Mediterranean part. So the warm winds come from the Mediterranean and really add fire to the situation, adds fuel to the fire of the heat that they have down in Andalusia, whereas the cooler winds that come from the Atlantic help cool the vineyards down. And that's what makes this parcel so special. The other important part of Valdespino is their velo de flor that these finos and that their wines are aged with. That is very much a part of their terroir. The barrels, the botas that are used for the aging, for the soleras of the fino are so impregnated, as is their almacén, their warehouse where they keep the barrels, and that is they have their very own very special cultures that create this velo de flor. And in fact, it is such a robust velo de flor that it is able to live for 10 years, and there are not very many velos de flor that can last that long. And in fact, this fino does have typically 10 years of soleras and criaderas, which is so much more than, the 2 or 3 years that most finos have. And because this velo, they have this velo lasts for so long, that it dies eventually on its own for lack of nutrients. And then they don't actually have to add or encabezar their finos to become amontillados. So that's very special. Both the fino and the amontillado from Valdespino are Grandes Pagos wines, since they are a single vineyard from Martornudo. So as you can see, it's just a very singular vineyard and a very singular wine that we have from Valdespino.
So Tasha, I just want to take a minute because I know we're just about to go into some, talk about some trends, but there was a question in the chat. They do not all have to have the same soil composition. I'm just going to go ahead and say absolutely not. As you can see, it is not about soil composition. It's about the expression of terroir. So the soil compositions from Albariza to the granite soils of Albarino to the wonderfully complex soils of the Meseta North are all going to be very different. So it's so the Pago designation is not about a singular type of soil. It's about the expression you get from that particular vineyard. And of course, soil is a big part of that. Another question we got was a single winery can have a single wine that is Grandes Pagos while other wines fall under other designations. Tasha, is that something you want to just comment on now? In the context of, for example, I think you've explained a couple of examples already, but the question was can a single winery have a single wine that is Grandes Pagos with other wines that fall under other designations?
Yes, absolutely. And Maria spoke before about this independent tasting committee. And I would absolutely reinforce that fact. These are, and in fact, there are rotating professionals from Spain here that make up that independent tasting committee. They taste completely blind. They do not know what they're tasting. And so these wines have to be qualified. So even if they qualify to be a Grandes Pagos wine and come from a single vineyard, they may not make it because it may not reflect the terroir. And that's one of the primary criteria that independent tasting committee looks for. Is this reflective? Does this wine have character, and is it reflective of where it comes from? So yes, a winery can very much have 1 or 2 wines that are in Grandes Pagos and then several others that are not.
Well, I think, thank you, Tasha. So it's pretty hard to choose between 35 wineries, which wines are going to be representative. And these wines are really meant just to show you a little bit of the thinking, the depth. And as Maria explained, this shared philosophy that the wineries have, which is to make wines that in many parts of Spain, that are very much kind of the indicator of realizing the full potential of the Spanish viticulture and terroir. So I know we're going to move on to just a few minutes here of asking Alvaro a few more questions about some of the trends to watch. I just want to share one thing, which is a friend of ours recently reminded me that Spain is the size of Texas. And here we are, here we are talking about a country that we articulated 8 regions we wanted to look at as part of the terroir workshop. But I can guarantee that consumers coming into the terroir workshop and learning about Spain are absolutely just overwhelmed and just so interested in the unique regional culture, the distinction of geography, culture, and people behind these wines, which are just such an interesting piece of teaching people not just about wine, but about terroir culture. So Tasha, and I'll let you kind of maybe explore some of those themes with Alvaro. And then as we're talking, please feel free to populate the chat with questions you would like to have answered. I know, Lori, I think we sort of answered the question that you had about quality and the criteria. We can answer that also. We can actually show you some of that, the extension, how extensive that quality and criteria and the reporting that has to go into for membership for a GPE. But Tasha, I'll hand it back to you. And please, again, put your questions in the chat. We want to make sure we get to them today.
So Alvaro, one of the absolutely wonderful aspects about Grandes Pagos. And in fact, I've had several wineries tell me it's one of the main reasons why they've joined, is the exchange of information between the wineries. And I know there are several formal meetings each year between the winemaking staff and vineyard staff. And they do talk with one another, and you're very much involved with that a lot of times. What are you hearing lately? What are wineries excited about? We've talked a lot about climate change, and we know that's a big worry, and there's a lot of talking back and forth about climate change and how to address it in the vineyard, how to address it in the winery. But what are wineries talking about apart from that? What are they excited about?
Well, obviously, yeah, we do a huge get together once a year, but we do exchange information throughout the year between all the wineries, and it is about the most exciting part of the year, I would say. It is not just us, because we also bring some experts so we discuss these topics that we sort of concern us in a way, or challenge us in a way. Obviously, climate change is one of the big topics, but how to manage climate change is the issue. How soils get into play, how water retention in the soils, it is important. We also are now talking a lot about irrigation, on how to use it, because irrigation, it's been forbidden for many years because it was mainly used to increase production. But now it's used in a different way. It's just I like to call them survival irrigation, and how to irrigate and when and how much, it is a question. And we do, like I said, doing a lot of research on this topic, and we openly say that we do this kind of irrigation when we're reaching these peaks of 40 degrees. That is becoming very common right now, and also we are not getting as much rain during the winter and autumn, so we're not getting our water tables filled up. So we are now also developing a new style of irrigation, which is, I call it sustainable irrigation, which is taking advantage of the water from the Douro River in February, March. When we see there's not enough water in the soils, we try to add this water from the river into the soils. And why sustainable? Because this water eventually will probably run down through Portugal into the Atlantic Ocean. So at the end, we're taking advantage and trying to use this water before it goes into the ocean. Obviously,
I was going to say, but pardon me for jumping in, but I think another thing that I've heard going around a lot too is the excitement about native grape varieties, recuperating native grape varieties. I know, for example, Abadía Retuerta has spent a lot of time. You have an experimental vineyard with over 30 different varieties, I believe, but you've also located almost a semi-wild Tempranillo on the grounds, right?
Yeah. Obviously, varietals is another point of discussion. Actually, we ended up in the last meeting without call them native, but local, because at the end, that's right. Because at the end, it is what really performs well in your terroir. It's what you should be keeping and what you should be sort of cultivating and performing, and yeah. For example, Abadía Retuerta, DOP. Sometimes I get this question asked: is what are the varietals of your DO? We're actually growing more than 25 varietals, because especially, obviously, Tempranillo is more than 50%, which is our signature or identity from the Douro Valley. But we also planted Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot specifically in the 90s, when these foreign varietals were called mejorantes or improvers. But now, all what is coming from outside is something that is not wanted. Huh? There's many trends, and at the end, our Cabernet Sauvignon from Pago Valdebellón, it is now performing way different from as 30 years ago. So this is what we call a local variety now. That is specific Cabernet Sauvignon, which obviously is not a varietal from Spain, but in our Pago Valdebellón performs in a way that has adapted to our continental extreme climate, to our droughts, to our fogs in the winter, and is giving us the wine that we like. But obviously, we use around 10 varietals as a majority of the varietals that we use, and the rest are under study, because with all the climate change, what we are seeing is that there's some difficulties now with the heat to maintain acidity, and we are focusing on these varietals that retain acidity and give us this fresh fruit and this freshness to the wines. And actually, we're now even creating new wines in Abadía Retuerta that are more linked to these times, I would say, to the new climate context. And we are very happy with the result. And but we are not forgetting about our classic wines, and we still work with them. But ideally, what we are doing is managing, especially in viticulture, differently, managing different things in the winery, trying to maintain the style, because temperatures are so different. We get no rain almost. So if we do nothing, probably the wines are going to be way different from the ones in the 90s. So what we're trying to do is sort of mitigate this effect, managing viticulture in a different way, shading the grapes, helping with a little bit of irrigation wisely. And this way we're maintaining in a way the style of Abadía Retuerta, but obviously, like I said, backing up with the touch of the vintage.
Tasha, since we're kind of closing down on time right now, there was a question I want to make sure we get to, which is, do wine lovers even, do we even think wine lovers will care about why do this? And I want to address that question because I've been working in the Spanish category since the late 90s, and it has always been very difficult to find an organizing principle to help Americans understand the complexity of Spain, of Spanish terroir and everything that is available. And we have always tended to approach it from one DO to another. And even after 20 years, there was a recent study that was presented just a few weeks ago by Wines from Spain and the government of Spain. There's only 3 or 4 DOs that are recognized by, let's talk trade first, consumer second. So imagine if you're a consumer who wants to discover something new. How do you go about that? How do you go about finding, and you're somebody maybe who's really understands Burgundy already and Bordeaux or wonderful Italian wines. And the Grandes Pagos de España, as has been articulated now several times, is about going beyond the culture of just understanding one DO and hop, skip, and jumping from one DO to another, but looking for a group of wineries that share the principles of stewardship of environment, creating wines that are super expressive of terroir, extraordinarily unique places, often being the biggest innovators. I loved your word, Alvaro, for improvers from other places.
Mejorantes.
With today's generation of Spanish true viticultural and Spanish winemaking innovation is coming from inside of Spain. And we have a lot to learn from that. But we also, in the same process, want to educate and offer a way for consumers to find the wineries that are really about terroir expression, the same way that you would, for example, if you looked for a wonderful importer organization that shared the same similar philosophies in other parts of the world. So that's that's a long explanation, but we are launching the Terroir Workshop for consumers who just want to dig in and get to know Spain and get to know the people behind these wines, the places that shape the culture of Spain, and to provide them with some insights into that maybe go a little bit that, you know, challenge what we have learned for the past, certainly in my case, for the past 20 years. So that was one question that was in the chat, and I wanted to make sure that we address. Okay, so this is actually Lori. This is a question from Lori, which I think, again, we're talking. We were in Mallorca and probably spent about an hour on one question debating, should we call it native or local? And the definition was, no, it's local. Because if you take Tempranillo to Mallorca and it were to prosper in Mallorca eventually, as Alvaro said so well about his Cabernet, over 30 years of growth, now it becomes a local variety. Does it matter that it wasn't indigenous to the region? No, but there is, of course, a strong movement to also preserve those heirloom varietals that do so well in local terroirs. So can an international variety be classified as a Pago, or does it have to be indigenous / indigenous? Natasha, do you know the answer to that?
I do, and Alvaro will back me up since he mentioned his Cabernet Sauvignon Pago de Valdepeon, and that certainly is a Grandes Pagos wine.
It is allowed, obviously. Actually, you can grow in Spain the grape varietals that are approved to grow in Spain, which is no more than 100 reds and less than 80 whites. So not that many if we compare to all the varietals that we have, the worldwide. But yeah, I think you can use whatever you think is suitable for your wines and your style.
There's another interesting question here about Tasha. I think this comment from John came when you were mentioning that how certain the label, can have the term Pago in it, pre-2003, if that was used for the description and protocol naming labeling of a wine. And the question was, how do you tell if that wine is part of Grandes Pagos?
Okay. There's a huge confusion here, and even for Spaniards. This law came in 2005, I think, and the thing is, they created the Pago designation, which is basically like more linked to territory, usually for a single producer, DO designation, and then the wines that were using the term Pago before the law was created were allowed to maintain their status to keep on maintaining their brands that they were registered before the Vino de Pago as a law was registered. So there's many wines that are not classified as Vino de Pago or no DO, like Pago Capellanes, Pago Carravejas, but they're not either into the Grandes Pagos de España Association, which is another thing to add a little confusion to, because Grandes Pagos is a private association, and you don't have to be a Vino de Pago to be inside the Grandes Pagos. You can even be an IGP or Vino de la Tierra, or just Dio Rioja or Dio Rias Baixas. What you need to do, to have as a wine to become part of Grandes Pagos is first to be approved by all members, and then share this terroir philosophy to produce wine.
Yeah. I think that that's such an important point, but there are some conversations happening within Grandes Pagos de España about ways to obviously promote who the members are. The same way as if you turn that label over and say, oh, I absolutely love this importer and what they stand for, and this is going to be a good wine, even if I haven't had it before, there is, yes, or this would be a wine I know what the philosophy is because I know who this importer is. So this is a work in process for us. Our terroir workshop is very much about spreading, the gospel of single vineyard and terroir winemaking from a Spanish perspective. And I will note that is not typical. That is not how we have approached Spanish wines historically. And Maria, I think I don't know if you wanted to just kind of comment on that, but this is something that you have been so really kind of clear about in terms of really projecting this image of identity through terroir and what people and the anticipation of what that wine can be.
I always say that for me, the name Grandes Pagos de España, the meaning in Pagos of this name is really the terroir. It's Grandes Terroir of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's not the legal term of pago in Spain, but just the terroir. And all our wineries, all our state, all of them have the wines from their own terroir. And that's what we can explain to everybody, that it's really the most important thing of Grandes Pagos de España is really the diversity. You can find other states absolutely different. You can have the own pagos like Abadía Retuerta, other states that own to Ribera del Duero or to other regions, but all of them share the quality and all of them share their personality. Their wines reflect the soil that where the wines were cultivated. And then that's I think it's the really the most important thing to explain to everyone.
And I think with that, we're going to wrap it up, but also just remind everybody that we are here to respond to questions and to connect you with these fantastic wineries. We have all barely scratched the surface of what these 35 wineries have to offer. But at any point, if we can support your search for information and connect you to the talent behind these wines, especially, and to the wines themselves, please let us know. Our terroir workshops are so exciting. The consumer response has been wonderful. We are just getting started there too. We will keep everybody here posted on where these workshops are taking place. And if it isn't a market that you are close to or in, you are invited to participate and attend. We'd love to have you. And I think with that, I just want to say just a great thanks to Alvaro, to Maria, to Natasja, and to all of you for joining us on this journey into Spanish terroir culture. And we look forward to supporting it. We'll be following up with materials, and please let us know what we can do to continue to answer your questions. So thank you. Best wishes for the great holiday season ahead. And we look forward to keeping in touch, and we will let you know how the terroir workshops calendar evolves. So thank you all, and have a great, enjoy the rest of your weeks.
Thank you. Thank you very
Take care.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
There's a few people still on. Yeah. A couple of people hanging out, just kind of see.